So here's a tricky question. With all the advancements in the AI that we have nowadays, should you still be writing tests for your application, or should you just ditch them and let some kind of a tool automate all of that? And I'm talking about unit tests, integration tests, contract testing, E2E testing, whatever you can think of. I believe that there's no need to do so much testing anymore. Now let me explain. I'm talking about the manual test ownership, meaning writing every line of the test by hand and actually knowing what your tests look like. I mean the code specifics. Even the creator of Node.js, Ryan Dahl, also states that writing syntax directly is not what software engineers should do anymore. And I totally agree with that. Instead, what we should do is own the behavior. We should know how the app should behave and let some automated tool write those tests for us. Not only write, but also adapt them as we change our production code. So every time we change the production code, the test should be updated in the background and ran against the new application. And by the way, as a side note, my tip to QA engineers, you should really consider refocusing, because QA engineering, or writing tests rather, is going to be automated even more compared to front-end development within the next years. And I'm going to do a small experiment by adding a small feature with a coupon codes on my e-commerce website, and I'm going to try to see how much effort it would take me to adjust the test manually. I'm going to let my AI agent to do that, and at the end I'm going to use the sponsor of today's video, TestSprite, and see how all of that can actually be automated from the beginning to all the way to the end. So this is going to be the code for my e-commerce website. On the back end, we have a simple Node.js app with a list of products that I have hard-coded, and we're going to return them to the UI. On the front end, it's a simpler React app with its own test files. And we also have the folder called tests that's responsible for E2E tests that are running with Playwright. Now, if I were to introduce a new feature called a product spec coupon feature, where I have already described all of that, what I would have to do, and by the way, let's take a look at my e-commerce website. As you can see, here are some items. You can add them to the cart, and you can remove them from the cart if you like. So this is how the cart looks like. And I want to have a new section here which says add a coupon, right? Very simple. What I would have to do is go to my backend application. I would have to adjust the endpoint, or actually create a new endpoint that is going to include some of the tests as well. Some of the changes would have to be made on the front end for the React application. So for example, at the checkout, I would need to adjust the way the coupon is being applied and so on. And by the way, this is already some of the work. And last but not least, I would also have to change my E2E testing, meaning add a user flow for adding a coupon code that's going to apply some kind of a discount for the overall price. Now, as you can see, this is quite some effort that you would need to do without even an AI agent. When it comes to the AI agent, what I could do is reference this file here. And by the way, this file contains all of the needed things for my feature. So it has some constraints, user stories, functional requirements, invalid use cases, and so on. So as you can see, it's quite thorough, and my AI agent would probably do a good job and even adjust the test. Now, I didn't add it as a system prompt, but let's run it and see what changes it does. All right, I can see that my agent did a lot of changes, and here's the summary. So we're gonna take a look at how the feature looks like now. So I'm gonna add some elements to the card, and hopefully we see a section and we do for the coupon code, and this is how the coupon code is later going to be applied to the total sum. But anyways, let's take a look at the test that it adjusted. As expected, in the backend, we do get a new describe block for the coupon validation endpoint and some of the tests that are underlying, for example, rejecting it, handling coupon code with white spaces, and so on. So that's pretty cool. And on the front end, we do have some tests for the cart itself, where the coupon input field is being validated and rendered and so on. So this is great. But every time I adjust my application, meaning I let my AI write some feature or I add some feature, I still need to go over to this unit test. And by the way, I hope it also adjusted the E2E test, and it did. As you can see, we have a new test that Playwright is going to run when I start the E2E test. This is all good, but all of that still needs to be adjusted every time I write a feature. And I'm kind of missing a big overview of seeing what kind of tests I have, what are the results, whether they're failing or not. So let me show you even a better way of dealing with that with TestSprite. So I'm gonna go and revert these tests, but I'm still gonna keep the feature as it is. So let's revert these, and we don't have the tests anymore. So obviously you need to set up TestSprite, and it's actually very easy to do if you wanna use an MCP server. So the MCP server is installed, and it's installed by adding this simple configuration for the MCP server in the JSON file under the .vscode folder. And my chat already has access to this MCP server. So if I click that, you're gonna see that my TestSprite MCP server is also already listed here. So if we go to TestSprite's documentation, we're gonna see very good summary of how we can actually use that. So the workflow at the end of the day is going to look like this. We're gonna see that we have bootstrapping of TestSprite. Obviously, we read the product requirements, we generate normalized requirements, then we create test plans, then we generate the test code, obviously execute them, and finally we analyze, and the AI is able to iterate and fix those issues. And we're gonna go to the very first step, which is telling TestSprite, hey, help me test this project with TestSprite. So if I go to my agent and I actually paste it here, what it's gonna do is it's going to use the MCP server of TestSprite. So TestSprite provides us the following tools that our agent can actually contact, and it's going to contact, for example, in this case, either the bootstrap or generate backend test plan. We're gonna see. Let's actually run this and see what we get back. All right, so the project is bootstrapped and it opened this kind of a window. Let me make this bigger, where we can choose whether we want to create backend tests or front-end tests. We're going to go for front-end tests, and I'm going to give it a port. Actually, it already picked up the correct port, and the product specification document is our markdown file. So I'm going to choose this file that I have here, open and continue. Okay, so it's creating a summary. It already created this folder called TestSprite test TMP. And we have config summary, we have the product requirement. Now it's trying to generate a test plan for our front-end project. Yeah, and after some time, we can see that TestSprite actually generated a bunch of files here, and it's already running our test, so we just need to wait. And when it comes to the files, it does create the code summary, which is something that it gives TestSprite a good overview of what our project looks like. Some standard product requirements definitions, because TestSprite actually chooses which framework it wants to use. It might use Cypress or it might use Playwright under the hood. And at the end of the day, it also creates some test plan for our front-end project, and it basically contains different blocks or different use cases. Now we're gonna wait and see what our report is going to look like at the end. Okay, now we have the test completed and only 4 out of 15 have passed, most likely because the Playwright test that we had actually did not incorporate the new changes with a coupon, because I reverted them for this demonstration. And let me show you how actually the dashboard of TestSprite would look like. I have 2 test runs, and one of them are my backend changes that I ran previously. So this is the run that actually was executed by me a minute ago, and this is the run that I executed yesterday. So as you can see, it actually monitors everything, and it can tell you what passed, what did not pass. And the cool thing is, it's not only limited to front-end or E2E tests, but you can also just create a backend test for your API. For example, one here, I literally gave it the URL of my API and told it that it should test various things such as validation, the response time, and so on. And it was able to determine that one of the empty products list, when no query is provided, did not pass. And by the way, in this dashboard, a really cool thing is the fact that you can actually drill down into individual tests that have failed to better understand what happened and which steps TestSprite actually took under the hood. So here's the video that it's going to record during the execution. I'm going to see the errors, and I also can see the code that actually got executed for this specific test. Now, given the fact that we have some failed tests, and if we scroll down in the documentation to step 9, AI fixes issues, we're gonna see that there's actually a prompt for letting TestSprite fix all of your issues. And it's called Help Me Fix the Code Base based on these test results. And it's going to look at the results that it generated by itself and then apply the needed fixes. How cool is that? If you think this can be useful for you or your team, go check it out. The link is going to be in the description. So at the end of the day, the answer to the question whether developers should be writing tests is they should know when and not to write the test. All of this can already be automated either by an AI agent or by using a tool like TestSprite. And with that said, if you agree with me or even if you disagree with me, leave a comment if you like and check out my channel for more interesting videos. I'm trying to publish every week. And with that said, I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.